Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Day in History, our nightly look back at a specific day in history, where we take a look back at a specific day in history, examine the historical context of the events and the historical ramifications of those events. We also take a look at some people born on that day and some people that died on that day. And as always, please hit the like button, the subscribe button, the bell notification icon to be alerted anytime I post new content. Tell a friend. And if you have any suggestions on how to make the channel better, please let me know in the comment box. I always love to get comments. And now, without any further ado, this day in history, February the 9th. And on this day, in 1950, Joe McCarthy gave a Lincoln Day dinner speech to the Republican Women's Club of Wheeling, West Virginia, and this is one of the most important speeches given in the 1950s, and in my opinion, one of the most important speeches given in the Cold War, because during the speech, Senator McCarthy of Wisconsin brandished a list of claimed communists that worked at the State Department, and he said that these were known communist sympathizers, known members of the Communist Party, and that the Secretary of State knew about it, and he continued to allow them to work at the State Department and form American foreign policy. 205. This number would later be revised down to 57, but it set off the second Red Scare in earnest. Up to this point, McCarthy had served 3 really undistinguished years in the Senate, really was not setting the world on fire with his work in the Senate, but this made him a national figure, and he demagogued this issue throughout the 1950s, all the way to a re-election bid in 1952. There's a lot of controversy that in that election, the presidential candidate of the Republican Party, Dwight Eisenhower, was not strong enough in distancing himself from McCarthy, although later Eisenhower would become a ferocious critic of Mr. McCarthy and his tactics. Of course, the whole era is now known as McCarthyism, because of the flimsy charges that McCarthy made. He attacked the U.S. military, he attacked Voice of America, he attacked President Truman, the State Department, just the general topics you see slandered by people whenever they get in trouble and they know that their goose is cooked. McCarthy is one of the most, in my opinion, reviled, rightly so, political figures in American history. One incident that McCarthy was involved in that I didn't know about till a few years ago, and I'm done research on it, and it's actually was largely forgotten for a long time, but it's now getting more attention, is that he was responsible for a fellow colleague, a fellow member of the Senate, committing suicide. And this is really what led to his censure a year later. So there was a Senator Hunt from Wyoming, who had a son who was arrested on a morals charge. And at that time, that was code for the son was a homosexual. He was arrested in a sting operation for a sex act with another man. McCarthy and a few of his Republican colleagues found out about this, and they went to Hunt and said, if you resign, this will never come out. Don't run for re-election. So they bullied him into announcing he wasn't going to run for re-election. Well, over time, Hunt's like, you know what? Forget this. And he announced, in fact, that he was going to run for re-election, and the morals charges crept back up, and in June 1953, at his Senate desk in his Senate office, Senator Hunt killed himself. He used a rifle to commit suicide, and he left 4 sealed letters. Senator Hunt's son did an interview in 2015 for the first time on the death of his father, the morals charges that were brought against him, and the men that were responsible for driving his father to suicide. In my opinion, Judge McCarthy is one of the most despicable figures in American history, and really should receive no credence of being a good person. He was an awful human being, and was responsible for the ruined reputations of a lot of people. And in fact, anytime I hear Donald Trump use the word McCarthyism, I have to laugh because one of his greatest friends, the man that taught Donald Trump everything he knew about being a slimy person, worked for Joe McCarthy, and that was a gentleman by the name of Roy Cohn. And we'll cover Roy Cohn another day, whenever the anniversary of his birth or death arises. I haven't decided yet, but we'll cover Roy Cohn in more detail at a later date. So, yeah, on this day, Joe McCarthy began his rise to fame. I guarantee you, those women that went to that Republican Women's Club meeting that day, little did they know how monumental the speech they would hear that day would be. Some births that occurred in 1814 in New Lebanon, New York. Governor Samuel Tilden was born. Samuel Tilden is the Al Gore of the 1876 election. He won the popular vote, but it was really close in 3 states, South Carolina, Louisiana, and surprise, surprise, Florida. And through some very questionable tactics, it was determined that his opponent, Rutherford Hayes, won those states, which won the Electoral College, which won the presidential election. So Tilden won the popular vote, Hayes won the Electoral College, and the rest is history. It was pretty much a compromise that Reconstruction would end, the Republicans would get the White House. Hayes would be an extremely unpopular president. In fact, he didn't run for re-election in the 1880 election. Although the Republicans would continue to hold the White House, they would nominate James Garfield in that election, and he would win. But the Al Gore of the 1800s was born on this day in 1814. Some deaths that have occurred on this day. In 1995, William Fulbright, a senator from Arkansas, died at 89 in Washington, D.C. He was a political mentor to Bill Clinton. He was a strong opponent of McCarthyism and the House Un-American Activities Committee, and he later became known for his opposition to American involvement in the Vietnam War. Fulbright was a strong voice against the Vietnam War. He was one of the most outspoken critics of the Vietnam War. At a time, it was not a popular position. So Fulbright should be known for that. He also has a international exchange program that is highly respected, known in his name as the Fulbright program. Anytime you hear Bill Clinton talk about his political rise, it's Senator Fulbright is mentioned. He worked in Senator Fulbright's office for a time, and really considers him a political mentor. So, on this day in 1995, Bill Clinton's political mentor, William Fulbright, passed away at the age of 89 in Washington, D.C. I will see you all tomorrow. Have a good night.